All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the International Methods Colloquium. I am Justin Essery. I'm an associate professor of politics and international affairs here at Wake Forest University. The IMC is a periodic, online, interactive seminar discussion on the application of quantitative statistical methodology to the social sciences, sponsored by Wake Forest University and also by Springer Publishing. This week's speaker is Luwei Ying of Washington University in St. Louis. She's giving a talk entitled Inferring Concepts from Topics Toward Procedures for Validating Topics as Measures. And as you can see, this is joint work with Jacob Montgomery, also of Wustl, and Brandon Stewart of Princeton. Luwei's talk will last about 30 to 40 minutes, after which point we will take questions from the audience. You may ask a question at any time using the Zoom Q&A button that appears at the bottom of your webinar window. And all questions will be held toward the end of the presentation, but you can ask a question at any point during the talk and we will get it. If you wish to be recognized and ask your question via audio, you can indicate that in the Q&A text box, and when the time comes, I will unmute you. Otherwise, I will just read your question out loud during the Q&A period. A link to Luwei's paper and slides will be available in the Zoom webinar chat window so that you may refer to it throughout the presentation, and I will post that in right after this introduction. Now I'd like to welcome Luwei Ying to the IMC. Welcome, Luwei.
Thank you very much, Justin. It's really my pleasure to be here today and to present this paper with Jacob and Brandon. This paper is about topic model validation. We write it when the text as data method are becoming more and more popular in social science. People are increasingly using unsupervised topic models to measure unique concepts for their research. In this talk, we will present a procedure to validate these customized measures based on a cross-sourcing idea. We will validate the topics generated by unsupervised learning and the labels of these topics. We'll also provide an R package for this procedure. Just to give you a sense of the context, let's look at an example. So here's a test from US politicians' social media. How do we analyze it? With unsupervised topic models, we can place it in conceptual bins. We could say, oh, this document should be about renewable energy with some probability. It also seems to be about presidency, about foreign policy, but not about budget. However, remember when we do this, what we are actually doing is this. We're placing this document into distributions of words that may or may not represent coherent concepts. There is a lot of researchers' degree of freedom here. Say people take words from this first cloud, read them, and come up with a concept. But what this concept is really matters for the outcome. For example, we might think these words represent energy and therefore use it to study energy reserves. Or we might think it represents global warming and conduct an analysis about environmental donations. Or even more problematic, what if we're just modeling a mashup? What if there aren't really anything there? These days, scholars are making incredible discoveries using topic models. The paper I'll list here are only a few examples. All these amazing studies mark a new age of custom measurement. People could design their unique measures. This is exciting, but on the other hand, scholars don't have stable tools to validate these measures. So here we would like to build a framework for this kind of validation. Specifically, in this framework, researchers need to be able to answer two questions. First, is there a latent trait there? And second, does it mean what the researchers claim? And further, how do we know the answers to these questions? As I showed a couple of slides ago, interpreting word clouds is very subjective. We've seen some bespoke validation methods in the literature, but there are very few general procedures. We propose a cross-sourcing approach in this paper. We're going to design and test a suite of task structures for human workers on Amazon Magnica Turk, aka MTurk, we have a set of tasks designed to evaluate topic coherence and another set of tasks to evaluate topic labels. We also provide an R package for future researchers to easily validate their own topic models and their labels. My talk from here is structured as follows. First, I'm going to briefly go over the literature of topic models and people's current practice of topic validations. Then I'll present the principles of our design as well as the running example. And after that, I will walk you through these games, first for model selection, then for label validation, and show you the results we got from our example. And finally, I will conclude with limitations. For a long time, political scientists have been inferring unobserved trait from observed data. We, for example, infer ideology from votes. We collect survey response and do some factor analysis. Now using text as data, and especially with unsupervised topic models, we could reduce this high-dimensional text data to some low-dimensional topics or subjects or concepts. But this unsupervised method is fundamentally iterative and case-specific. If you've played with topic models using any software, you know this, that you could get very different output by just twisting the parameters. And it is fundamentally qualitative, not quantitative. It's really about human interpretation. We read an existing literature using topic models, and here is what we see as the current common practice. We call it topic modeling 4-step. In the first step, researchers estimate several models. Then they choose one model from them. And then they map these topics into a concept or concepts. This is what we often call the labeling process. From there, they make substantive inference. It's not hard to see that the second and third steps are both very qualitative. Remember that topic models were developed for exploratory purposes. The decision on which of the different models best summarizes the document sets involves a lot of researcher degree of freedom. Inferring concepts from these topics is even more subjective. Again, how do you know if you have captured a stated concept? And perhaps more importantly, how do we know if you have captured a stated concept? How do we readers know about this? Well, for us readers, topic models are like black boxes. They don't give us public access. And because of no public access, validation is vital. We say meanings created via validation, and no validation, no meaning. This is why Grimmer and Stewart put in their paper that one of the 4 principles of quantitative text analysis is not validate, but validate. On the one hand, validation is just so important. We all know that. But on the other hand, there are a few general validation methods. As a researcher, recall how you read a work out. When we look at these distributions of words, we often have to tilt our heads to the side, like these dogs, and say, well, I think this cloud seems to mean this concept. But when we explain our interpretation of these words to the readers, we need to sound like a professional. We just can't put all qualitative validation on the page. Therefore, the readers have to trust these qualitative interpretations. They cannot replicate the qualitative interpretation. This is not how open science should work. There are some customized validation practices in the literature. In social science, people have examined how the spikes of a certain topic on, for example, social media correspond to external events. Other people also compare results from topic models with human hand labeling or supervised learning. These all belong to the bespoke methods. There are also some proposals from computer science that I won't have time to elaborate in this talk. We'll talk about the held-out log likelihood a little bit later. What we propose in this paper is using the wisdom of crowds. We validate topics as a set of little games played with online workers. This crowdsourcing method is first introduced by Chang and co-authors from computer science. You see the citation here, almost 2000 in the past decade. This crowdsourcing idea may be a little bit less convincing than customized validations, but it is much more generalizable, and it is almost always available. We build on Chang and co-authors' work, and we extend and improve their task designs to evaluate both topic coherence and topic labels. Eventually, we want researchers to have reliable measures for their substantive studies in social science. Now I would like to talk about the principles of our task designs and our running example. Our goal is to design a task that is indicative of a good model. How do we achieve that goal? The key premise here is the more people code the same with the model, the better the model. I said the better the model, not the better the people, because text should be understandable and interpretable to human beings. With that premise, we set 4 principles for ourselves. First, the task needs to be generalizable. They should be useful for different documents, different topic models, different number of topics, and so on. Second, they should be able to discriminate between good models and bad models. We try to avoid ceiling and floor effects. They should be easy enough for the MTurk workers to do. We can't require a PhD from people to do our tasks. And finally, we hope the tasks to be reliable. Well, text is always subjective. An indicator like this needs to be stable across replications. These principles or goals might sound a little bit abstract without any specific context. We now provide a running example. We scrape the US senators' Facebook pages. After data cleaning, we end up with more than 1,600,000 documents. We randomly held out 10% of them, so later we will be able to compare the results from our methods with that indicated by the holdout log likelihood. We fit 5 models. There are all STMs, but everything I talk about today can be generalized to any mixed membership topic models, and some can be also used with single membership models. Notice that model 1 is not converged. We intentionally limited it to only one EM iteration. It serves as a baseline, and we hope our methods are able to tell that this is the worst model. At the same time, I want to point out that the STM package defaults to spectral initialization, and that is a clustering method in its own right. That is to say, model 1 has already begun putting similar words together. So even though it's a baseline, it's a relatively strong baseline. We have no prior on which of the other 4 is the best. With this running example, we first assessed topic coherence. We tried 3 task structures. The first 2 are adapted from that highly cited crowdsourcing paper by Chang and co-authors. The third is our novel design. Everything comes in this form with a question, some choices, and maybe a document up here. This is how our tasks look on the MTurk platform. With our R package, people can send a bunch of tasks like this to MTurk at once. The word intrusion task is the easiest. As you can see, this is the question we ask. We randomly sample 4 words from the top 20 high probability words from one topic. Then we mix these words with another words drawn from a different topic. We want to see if people are able to pick out this intruder. The next task is the top 8 word set intrusion. Chang and co-authors just call it topic intrusion. It's more complicated because we first present a randomly chosen document like this. And the 4 choices are 4 topics, each represented by the top 8 words. 3 of them are model predicted topics that most associated to that document. And the 4th top word set is randomly chosen from other lower probability topics. The question just asks people to identify this most unrelated topic, the intruder. These 2 task structures are basically what have been done in computer science, although we have tweaked a few things in the design. When we first run them online, we find these tasks were often too hard, and that means low information to us. So we restructured them to give the online coders better chance of understanding the context. We call this new task random 4 word set intrusion. As you can see, structurally, it is similar to word intrusion. The question is still looking for the intruder. However, we provide more words in each option by randomly choosing 4 words from the top 20 words of a topic. Here we prevent word repetition in each option. So basically, we're selecting 12 words from the top 20 and randomly assign them to 3 different choices. And then we choose 4 words from the top words of another topic. Compared with word set intrusion, random 4 word set intrusion is providing more information. Obviously, there are more words. Interacting with more words also makes this task advantageous over top 8 word set intrusion, because for some topics, the highest 8 words were hard to interpret. Well, their semantic relationship was perfectly clear when looking at 12 of the top 20 words. For any task structure I just described, you can easily generate n numbers of tasks from any topic model output using just one line of code from our R package, like this. I'll talk about package installation at the end. We choose to use the Amazon Magnica Turk platform to run these tasks. For each model task combination, we first run 500 hits. One hit just means one task. This is an MTurk jargon. So HIT, H-I-T, refers to human intelligence task. We run 500 hits, then we run the exact same 500 hits again. That way we can assess consistency between identical trials. The 1,000 hits altogether cost about $70. These hits were usually done within hours, 1,000. Again, posting tasks also just require one line of command. By the way, this HIT ID path argument is a local directory where you want to immediately store the task IDs returned from MTurk. You need these IDs to retrieve results and do post-analysis. We require our online coders to take a training module first. They need to be familiar with the background information, and they need to pass a test with some example hits before doing our actual hits. To monitor the quality of the work as they do the tasks, we randomly mix in 1 gold standard hits every 10 hits. The answers to these gold standard hits are relatively clear. So we'll be able to tell whether people are paying attention by seeing whether they got the gold standard hits correct. Here I'm going to show you the results. The horizontal axis represents different task structures. The vertical axis is the proportion of hits that human coders correctly pick the answers classified by the models. This gray line represents random guessing. And here is 50% correct rate for our reference. This is the result for Model 1, word intrusion task. People just did a little bit better than random guessing. The two transparent bars are two identical runs, 500 hits each, and the solid bar is the pooled result. Among the other three models, the 100 topic one is better than the 50 topic one, which is better than the 10 topic one. But as we increase the topic number from 100 to 500, we see an overfitting problem. The model is not getting better by just adding topic numbers. We did proportion test for each model pair and put the p-value there when two models are significantly different. For top 8 word set intrusion, the 100 topic model comes top. The unconverged model is still the worst. The differences between models 3 to 5 are not significant. Well, our novel task structure, random 4 word set intrusion, discriminates between any pairs of the 4 models. From these results, I want to highlight 3 main takeaways. First, the rank ordering of the first 4 models are the same across all 3 tasks, but different task structures penalize overfitting differently. Our novel task structures has penalized overfitting the most. The rank ordering suggested by random 4 word set intrusion is consistent with the whole dog log likelihood, but word intrusion and top 8 word set intrusion rank the overfitting model higher. The second takeaway is there are differences in how difficult workers find these tasks. In word set intrusion, people couldn't get 60% correct for even the best model. In top 8 word set intrusion, they got 70% correct rate at most. But in random 4 word set intrusion, the tasks become easier predominantly for the good models, but not for the unconverged one. We interpret this as evidence for easy to use. The third thing we want to highlight is the results across runs are fairly stable at 500 hits. No identical trials are significantly different from each other. So we feel confident that this is a useful exercise for evaluating the semantic coherence of models. Okay, now we have a method to select the best topic models. We could be confident to say that there is something there underlying the text. But what is that something? What is that latent trait? Does that latent trait mean what the researchers mean? To answer that question, we're going to validate the topic labels. We choose our best label, best model, model 4 from the last step. Now we need an example of what good and bad labels are to assess whether or not our label validation exercise is working. That is, we need some sort of ground truth to see if our proposed methods work as expected. To address this, we're going to compare 2 sets of labels from what we called the careful coders and the cursory coders. The careful coders are members of our research team. We independently labeled each of the 100 topics. We've carefully read the high probability words, frequent and exclusive words, the 50 representative documents for every topic. We asked for help from some other graduate students to be the cursory coders. We asked them to label the topics very quickly. To see how this worked, let's label one topic together. The high probability words are in order: work, families, hard, workers, working, pay, woman, class, middle, labor, etc. The most frequent and exclusive words are hard, paycheck, work, minors, pay, labor, wage, etc. Okay, stare at these words for a second. What do you think they mean? Well, our research team read a lot of documents and agreed this is about equal pay for women. The cursory coders labeled it as working class. These are both totally reasonable labels given these keywords. You won't be surprised to see labels like either of them in a published paper. In the talk from here, I'm going to focus on just 10 so-called butter and bread domestic policy topics like the one we just did together. Everyone from our research team thinks these topics are coherent when we did the independent labeling. And here they are. Well, we expect the careful coders label will outperform the cursory coders label. You see that all these labels are actually not that different. We just talked about equal pay for women versus working class. And we have things like agriculture versus farm bill, like that. In the paper, we have more discussions on distinguishing between broad categories versus distinguishing between more fine-grained categories. And we have run different tasks to elaborate on that. But for now, I will assume researchers only care about these 10 topics. We designed 2 task structures to validate the labels, label intrusion and optimal label. They are both our originals. Here is an example for label intrusion. You can tell by the name, it has the same logic with topic validation tasks. It's also about finding the intruder. Structurally, it's just like the top 8 word set intrusion. We give them a document, and we ask for the most unrelated topic represented by the labels. The 3 non-intruder labels are the top 3 model predicted topics associated with that document. But notice that now the topics are represented by the labels, not top words. The intruder is a label suggesting a topic less related to the document. It's randomly selected from the lower probability topics as predicted by the model. The optimal label task is different from all others. Now we're no longer looking for the intruders. People are asked to go directly to the best label and pick it out. In this example, the document is just one sentence. MIT professor's study shows that 14% American companies are bringing manufacturing home. The option manufacturing best summarizes this example document. People will just click on this option. We were attracted to the optimal label task structure because it is similar to the validation exercises already common in the literature. In existing literature, research assistants are asked to divide documents into predefined categories to assess topic quality. This is basically choosing the best label for the documents. Now let's look at the results together. Again, the x-axis is different task structures. The y-axis is the proportion of tasks that our MTurkers get correct. These are the reference lines, random guessing, and 50%. For label intrusion, the careful coders labels got a score of more than 60%, while the cursory coders label got around 50%. One is better than the other. Results are significantly different. We put the p-value there. Likewise, the optimal label task has also successfully discriminated between the 2 sets of labels. People are generally doing better with the optimal label task than with label intrusion task. it seems to be more interpretable as people are basically asked to confirm or refute the conceptual labels assigned to the documents. Two takeaways I want to emphasize here. First, it is a good sign that we got the same rank ordering from different tasks, and the results are very stable across identical runs. No results between identical trials are significantly different. You could tell that from the transparent bars. As for which of the two task structures to choose, we think it really depends on the researcher's specific need. If you have mixed membership models with each document talking about many different topics, I would first recommend label intrusion. You could also use the optimal label task if you really care about the top one topic. If you have single membership models, then you will want optimal label tasks. As we're approaching the end of the talk, I also want to talk about some limitations of our crowdsourcing approach. Until now, I haven't really talked about interpreting the results in isolation. It's not easy. Let's say Model 3 gets a 70% correct rate in the second task. Is that good or bad? Well, we hesitate to provide a cutoff in the paper because these things are context dependent. Well, we do know that random guessing will result in a 25% correct rate. A good model or label should achieve a much higher score than that. As for how much higher, the researchers will need to provide some context about the complexity of their documents. Second, the text posted need to be in a language that the online workers can read. The text also has to be what you are allowed to post on mTurk. It can't be copyright protected, for example. Third, to get reliable results from the workers, we made a training module for each of our tasks in this paper. We recommend future researchers to do this as well. It wasn't hard, but it's always something to keep in mind as screening workers is important for data quality. We write this paper as the text as data movement is providing opportunities for individual scholars to design their unique measures. This is an exciting new age of custom measurement. But as we always know, social science will only be able to make valuable inference with quality measurement. And we'll only be confident that we have quality measurement when we have rigorous validation. We thus propose a crowdsourcing method for both topic selection and labeling. We hope more people could join us in using this validation exercise. Our R package makes this procedure really easy. It can be installed from my GitHub page. In the appendix of our paper, we have detailed instructions on how to set things up. And you are also more than welcome to reach out to me with any questions or suggestions after this talk. At the same time, we hope this is just one of the many validation methods proposed and tested. The task designs we offer are not a replacement for other validation exercises. They're just something that researchers can reach for in most cases. With this paper, we want to begin a dialogue with our readers, a dialogue about how and when it is appropriate to make inferences about latent concepts from topic models. Thank you so much. I look forward to your questions and comments.
All right. Thank you for that presentation, Luwei. At this point, Luwei Ying is available to take questions from the audience. You can ask a question using the Zoom Q&A button that appears at the bottom of the webinar window. If you wish to be recognized and ask your question via audio, please indicate this in the Q&A text box. Otherwise, I will read your question during the Q&A period. So we have a question that's already been submitted from Chayo Cheng. This might come up later, but I am curious if the demographic structure of those who participate in these validation games will influence the final outcomes. What do you think?
Oh, yes, that's a really interesting question. So, uh, we don't think it is because we've actually run these tasks for multiple rounds. We run more tasks than what we show in the paper, and we didn't see any difference across demographic structures of the participants because it's really not about the people but about the model, and our instructions are super specific. So I would say different people are giving really similar answers.
I want to push on that a little further and ask about, let's say, hypothetically, we had people coding topics from speeches by Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. Would conservative, and I'm talking about American conservatives and American liberals here, progressives, would they identify the same topics as being relevant in those documents? I'm thinking, for example, that in the U.S. we've reached a point in our politics where we might not even agree what the speech is really about.
Yes, that's a really interesting point. So I would say in that case, training workers would be really important. So I haven't got a chance to show our training module here, but in the training module, we would specifically tell our online coders that a document reads like this, what means a topic like this. So very, very specific. So in this case, if I were a researcher, I would say, regardless of your own ideological position, let's just be on the same page and say this means that this kind of rhetoric means that topic.
I'm sort of laughing inside because I'm thinking I wish we could do that in our voting behavior generally, right? We could just train people. Okay, this means this and this means that. Um, that might work for a test like this, but that sort of raises a related question that I had, which is the extent to which this procedure is a test or a validation of some sort of schema, theoretical schema, versus the extent to which this is a structured theoretical measurement that assumes the truth of a theory. And let me explain what I mean by that. If you train your subjects to do certain things, you're essentially training them to instantiate some framework that you have, and therefore you have to assume that that framework is correct. But if we're trying to use text analysis data to test a theory, of course, most especially it would be problematic if we're testing the theory we then crystallized in the coding. It seems like we enter a catch-22. It's a bit like trying to test theories of voting behavior using DW nominate scores or Martin Quinn scores. There's a certain model of voting that's baked in, and you can't test that model with the scores. So I'm curious, basically, how you see these scores being used, and how we might have to treat them differently if we're testing a theory versus sort of assuming a theory and then moving forward on some dimension.
I guess what this validation task, I'm still calling it validation, what this validation tasks doing cannot speak to the theory. And that's what the measurement is supposed to do. So when you do the measures, it's all about the measures you define. And then the theory is more about the downstream effect, like whether A is causing B. So that is to say, the topic models should be about concepts and not the effects of the concepts. And we
Well,
need to
so
first
oh, please
confirm that.
continue.
Yes, please.
No, I was just please. It's your talk. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just mean that's what people think they are using topic models for. And what we are arguing in this paper that you would have to confirm that you are measuring what you claim, and then use this. And only after that, researchers could use the measures to make further inference.
Well, that's kind of what I'm thinking about because, I mean, let's take a really sort of simple example. Suppose I want to, code something like ideology. In order to do that, I have to assume that ideology exists and that it takes a certain form. And if I want to code documents, for example, I'm thinking of like how some previous authors have coded Supreme Court justices using editorials, right? They code the ideology of these paragraphs. We can imagine trying to automate that process and validate the automation of the process, but at root, we're assuming that there is such a thing as ideology and it behaves in certain ways, and our coding crystallizes that, and then we can maybe use it to predict some, we can test some predictions that use ideology, but we're assuming ideology is true. In other words, we're not validating that ideology is a real concept. We're assuming that. So what do we have to assume to go along with your validation procedure, and what do we not have to assume?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So just now we talked a little bit about ideology, but for me, ideology is something different from what we're trying to get here, because ideology sounds like a spectrum. You have extreme left, extreme right, and people can literally stand on any point on that spectrum. But what we are doing here is classification. So people want to put some text or documents into a label with a label in it. So if it's about ideology, then maybe some other text data technique would work better than topic models, like some sort of scaling process. So that goes back to your question: what assumptions we should have in this kind of validation tasks. I would say the first assumption is that you are doing classification, not scaling. And you will assume there are some underlying concepts associated with the documents. That's the assumption. And we try to explore whether you are right. And if you are right, then we should be able to find some evidence from this cross-sourcing work. And if you're not right, if there aren't really anything there, there are just like random topics all over the place, then you will get a pretty low score, and we should be able to detect it.
Yeah, the thing I worry about is that I can recognize someone else's topical schemes, even if I don't agree with them. So, for example, I can classify certain statements, for example, as being about corruption, because I recognize the person talking thinks of it that way, but I don't, right? And so I understand that they're putting it in that box, and if you give me the word intrusion task, I will figure that out. But that doesn't mean I actually agree with it. So I think, yeah, you have to assume that concept is real, right? And that it's...
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's an advantage of this kind of task, because the coders don't need to agree with the opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Like associated.
Yeah, I get that. I see that.
Yeah, and even in our example, like the politicians can have really radical ideas, and people don't need to agree with them.
We have a question from the audience, so I want to make sure to get to that. An anonymous attendee asks, does your process work best at choosing between very different topic models, for example, models with 10 versus 500 topics, as compared to models that are more similar, for example, models with 10 versus 11 topics, or does it work equally well at both kinds of tasks?
Yes, that's a really great question. So, based on my experience with playing with topic models, the close number of topics doesn't necessarily imply close quality of topic models. So it's likely that the 10 topic model, it just doesn't make a lot of sense, but the 11 topic model is doing really well. So yes, the idea is ideally you would compare a lot of topic models and pick up the best one you could get. And sometimes it's really similar. and you might not get significant difference with like between any pair of the models. But in that case, you can still tell which one is the best.
If just to follow up on that, if you could go back to your graph, one of your sort of confidence interval plots there. Yeah. Actually, go back a little further. I think the previous one
the topic validation task.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah, that's fine. That's great. So it seems like it took me a while to figure out what's going on here. I want to see if my understanding is correct. You're simultaneously evaluating the quality of a topic model, viz. How many topics you break the word the corpus into, and then you're simultaneously evaluating the quality of the validation assessment, right? So what we're finding is the best model in this case. Most of the validation, actually all three of them, agree that it's model 4. But you also want to say my random 4-word set intrusion is the best because look, the proportion correct is really high here.
Yes, that's basically what we did. Well, actually, at this point, we would not be that assertive and say our model is just the best and you should never use the other two. That's not what we want to say in this paper. The message we conveyed is our task is easier for the coders. So, and they indeed spend much less time in doing these tasks, and they still it is still able to discriminate the models. So that seems like convenient and easy to use.
You're right. I brought my own judgment to that description. It might be helpful just to if the time and easiness is important. I mean, this graph's already pretty busy, but maybe there's some way of getting that in there. I don't see any more questions from the audience. So I would like to thank Luwei Ying for being our presenter this week. I really enjoyed this talk. It's really interesting. I want to remind everyone. Oh, wait a minute. Wait, there's a question that came up. So, and we still have time. So I'm going to ask this question, and then I'll get back to my rigmarole. Leo Obadic said or asks, there are, for example, augmented LDA models that take into account demographics. They show it brings significant improvement to topic modeling. Would this information fix the problem if we know information about the subjects that do the validation? What do you think about making it that way? Then you won't need to assume that you train those people correctly.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure if I'm understanding Leo correctly, so please correct me. But what I think Leo is suggesting is improving the topic model itself. And incorporating covariance is actually what STM, structured topic model, is doing. And yes, in a lot of cases, you could definitely improve the topic models by adding covariance, but that does not guarantee you have the best model or you have the best model for your need.
Right, you still have to decide how many topics there are.
Yes, exactly. And let's say even though you have incorporated a bunch of covariance, then you will still have possibly infinite number of topic models, right? You could just change the topic numbers. You could change a lot of other hyperparameters in the topic models, and you still have a bunch of options. And in that case, you still have to decide which would be the best model you want to go with.
All right. Well, anyway, so as I was saying before, thanks to Luwei for being here. This broadcast will be posted on our website if you'd like to share it with a colleague or watch it again later. I also want to remind everyone that we have a talk next week, Friday, November 6th. The U.S. election is on the 3rd, so I don't know what kind of mood we're going to be in, but we'll be here to give a talk or to see a talk. That talk will be by John Kane of NYU. Please see our website, www.methods-colloquium.com, to get information about that talk. Luwei, thanks for being here today. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone. See you next week.